How you going, guys? Curtis from Cutting Edge Engineering. For today's job, we're going to be getting another part rebuilt for the Frenochrome project. Today we're going to be rebuilding the steering cylinders. So the steering cylinders were one of the first things that we removed because we knew they had to be rebuilt, but it has been quite a few months since we took these off because there were so many other things that needed repair as well. But now we're starting to get everything rebuilt, so when we finally start putting the crane back together, everything's fixed and ready to go. So the first thing we're going to get started on is making the new rods, but if you remember back from the video where I disassembled them, one of the rod clevises was seized onto the rod and I need to remove that without damaging it. So because the rod's going to be scrapped, to save a bit of time, I'm going to set this up in the saw and just cut the rod off the clevis. So now we can take this to the lathe and get the rest of the rod machined out. So I got the center drilled out, but as you can see, the holes don't line up, so I can't just knock out the roll pin. Obviously it's moved at some stage of its life and broken off that pin. So what I'm going to do is put in a boring bar and bore out the rest of that rod material and hopefully save the thread. Oh, good old Loctite. So I've got the rest of that rod material removed, but because there's so much Loctite in those threads, I am going to run a tap down there just to clean it up, but I can't do it in the lathe because it's not perfectly in alignment. So I'm going to take it out of the lathe, set it up in a vise, and run a tap through it by hand. Hey. So that's cleaned up the threads quite nicely. While I'm here, I'm going to run the tap through the other clevers. For whatever reason, only one of them had Loctite in it, which might be that one had been repaired before. So those are done. Before I put them on the new rods, I'm going to give them a clean up, but now I'm going to make the new rods. And the material we're going to be using for the new rods, it is 1.5 inch induction hardened chrome bar. So the first thing we're going to do is turn down the end for the piston. So the first thing I'm going to do is go in with a ceramic insert to remove the induction hardened layer. Now I'm going to change out to my carbide insert and machine this down to size. Now I'm just going to change my tool and do the chamfering. I'm also going to go in with a radius tool to add a relief for the O-ring. So now I'm going to machine the thread for the nut. I'm going to use a full form insert. It is 12 threads per inch and 1 1/8 in diameter. So that's this end completed. Before I machine the other end for the clevis, I'm going to get the other rod up to the same stage. So now with this machined up to the same stage, we can flip the rod and machine the end for the clevis. And this is pretty much the same process. We're going to machine off the induction layer, machine it to size, machine in a relief, then we'll machine the thread. It is a 12 TPI by 1 1/4 inch. So that's both the rods machined. Before we can start to reassemble these cylinders, we need to get everything cleaned. So we're going to put everything in the hot wash.
Hello. Ready? Let's go. Yeah, oi. Go.
So that's been running for about 40 minutes. Everything's nice and clean, but it's a little bit hot, so we're just going to let it cool down a bit. So those have cooled down enough now, but there is still a little bit of surface rust there. So I'm just going to clean that up with a wire wheel on a pedestal grinder. And because these are small components, there is no purpose in setting up the big sandblaster to blast them. Now that I've got those cleaned up, I can install the seals for the pistons and the glands. Now I'm going to fit the rod to the clevis, and I'm just going to use the press to hold the clevis in position. If you haven't already noticed, I'm not using roll pins to lock these two together because in this application, roll pins are not necessary. We've all seen what sort of dramas they cause. So instead of using roll pins, I'm going to use Loctite 263. It is a high strength compound, and once these two are wound together, they are never coming apart. Now I'm just going to do up the nut. As I tighten it, it is also going to tighten the rod into the clevis. So that's our first rod reassembled. We're going to get the second one up to the same stage. So with this rod done, we're going to get this rod out of the way and get a barrel set up so we can finish the reassembly. Righto guys, now we've got both cylinders reassembled, we're going to get them set up for painting. So I'm actually going to use the old rods as a fixture to hold the cylinders suspended in the air so I can paint the entire cylinder. Here we go. Righto guys, so that's our cylinders painted and completely dry. Really happy with how they turned out. So the cost to rebuild these, it was about $90 in rod material and about $114 in seals. So for about $100 each, we were able to rebuild both cylinders. If I was going to try and replace these with a generic cylinder, it'd cost about $850 each. So well worth the effort, and that's another part ticked off the list for our Frenno crane when we start to put it back together. So these I'm just going to have to put aside for a little while because there's still a few more things I need to do to the crane. Thanks for watching. So because these are pretty small components, there is no point setting up. So that's our first wad. So that's our first what was that?
What the hell?
That had a moment. My pliers together.
Jesus.
Oh yeah, hang on. Go in. Oh, fucking God. Something like it. Oh, fuck. Oh, fuck me. I'm stuck in a loop. Can you say it again, please?
Oi, oi, sure. Yeah, oi, oi, oi.